Welcome to the Christopher Peter Review, an economic perspective on salient current events. In this special episode, we are going to discuss answers to some of the problems facing our society, world, and favorite sports city. There are always questions our society needs to answer. The important aspect is the ideas put forth to solve them. In this episode, we try to find answers to important and interesting questions. Let us begin this special episode.
Welcome. Are we actually as generous as we are portrayed to be? I have heard one of the reasons why people are not as generous as some may hope for them to be, is that they are concerned that their hard-earned money will go to some person who one would consider a jerk or undeserving of the money. And the government already does that, so why throw more money down the drain? Now, I will be completely honest, there is some legitimacy to feel that way. I have been approached by people asking for donations for something I felt was not at all helpful or pointless in the grand scheme of things. Or simply I chose to donate to something that I felt was more appropriate and better use of funds. Or sometimes there are events that make you rethink your generosity. I remember during my undergraduate years, I was getting a cup of coffee with a gift card from my boss. This was around the holidays. A homeless man asked if I could help him get a coffee and a meal. So I used the balance of the card and gave the few dollars of cash I had to help him. Some other ones outside saw it and immediately asked for the same. I replied that I gave my last dollars to that man. One in the angry homeless mob said that is not fair, and another heard my keys and thought I was lying. After that, it made me think twice about helping the homeless directly. Rather, I viewed a better approach was donating to services that provided for the poor. There are some who would argue that the best help is direct to the person in need. That only holds true if the person is reasonable and makes rational decisions like prioritizing food and shelter over vices and destructive behaviors. Many times, people do not make the best decisions and you only subsidize their problems rather than eliminating them. Based on recent events, we know for a fact now that giving money to some of these organizations may not be a better choice either, as their intentions are misleading. Too many organizations that supposedly do good are actually scheming to redirect donations, government tax dollars, and other funds to their own pockets or the people they support in politics. It is pretty clear that so many of the non-governmental organizations, healthcare companies, and other charitable organizations were at the very least not being effectively regulated, especially in states and areas run by politicians that are big on growing the regulatory complex in our society. Yet, they target for-profit companies to settle with donations to organizations and then no one really watches where that money goes. I recall years ago when a reporter asked a financial regulator about where the fines levied on the banks went, the person could not adequately account for where the funds went. Many assumptions, but made it clear that he was not truly sure. This was well before the recent citizen journalism that uncovered scandals, before the social media impact that is the modern media. So, if you cannot trust the person to make good decisions, and the government and their partners have a pretty bad track record of actually delivering good in these situations, despite the exponential growth in cost, then it is not surprising that people are cynical about do-gooders. When people actually do good, there is skepticism, and rightfully so. For me, I still try to be charitable, but do my research to try to find how much of the donations actually flow out of the organization and where the impact is. There are always administration fees and the people are not expected to work for free. But if you are going to regulate the for-profit providers, then you must regulate every organization that is taking federal money or donations. The worst thing is when people think they are helping but are being defrauded. Why do Philly fans view the second-round sweeps of both our Flyers and Sixers completely differently? Both my Philadelphia 76ers and my Philadelphia Flyers were swept out of the second round of the playoffs with quite ease by their opponents. Both opponents were clear contenders for their respective conferences, and the Sixers' elimination of the Celtics made the Knicks an even bigger Eastern Conference favorite. The Hurricanes have yet to lose in the playoffs and seem headed towards a great matchup in the Stanley Cup Final with the Colorado Avalanche. The explanation of the disparity in how the fans view the two teams is quite simple. The Flyers are a younger team coming out of a rebuild and the dismantling of the Pittsburgh Penguins shows that they have a bright future ahead of them. Despite the loss to the Hurricanes, the Flyers played better as the series went on and seems like it should help the young talent develop in the future and be hungry to do better in the next playoff battle they face. For the Sixers, the predictable loss to the Knicks just feels like it is more of the same with a talented roster that simply cannot get out of the second round, whether through health or talent living up to their billing when it matters most. The talented roster is on the other side of the peak for most of the players, besides the two studs they have in Max and VJ. But Joel and Paul George are on the back end of their careers and it is showing with the lack of consistency. I still believe Philly fans should have done more to support the Sixers and not allow the Knicks fans to have an obvious presence. There is no excuse to abandon ground and allow your city to be invaded like that. When teams do not play well, It happens. New York faces that as well. But Philly fans, we must hold the fort a little better. For our Eagles, Phillies, Flyers, Sixers, and Union. At the same time, we want every one of our teams to be like our Eagles, who spend every moment trying to position the roster and the entire organization to be able to compete at the highest levels possible. I do not doubt that the Sixers want to win a championship, but Daryl Morey seemed overly focused on star power rather than overall roster depth, and they never found an adequate approach to deal with lengthy absences of our former most valuable player but often injured superstar. The Flyers are trying to build a team that can consistently contend, something that has not happened since the days Bobby Clark ran the front office. We have made the playoffs a handful of times since our last run to the Cup, have seen stars traded to reduce cap impact while fielding a team that did little but dwell amongst the bottom of their division. Now, there seems to be some hope that the strategy is paying off. The Flyers are young and play a style of hockey that Philly fans can enjoy. They took the fight to the Penguins and dominated the series in terms of physicality, which was needed to get past a star-powered and talented roster in the Penguins that still have players from their cup-winning teams, and have an all-time great in Sidney Crosby. The Carolina Hurricanes are simply on a different level when you consider talent, experience, and depth. They have been a staple in the Eastern Conference playoffs for quite some time, and seem formidable enough to make it to the Cup. Not sure if they can challenge the AVS, but they will likely get that opportunity. Philly fans just want our teams to give effort that is clear and reasonable. There are no guarantees in sports. The New York Mets were favored to win the division but are currently in last place. No amount of spending can guarantee success. The combination of building a team that is talented, connected, and able to match skills with opponents is important.
Most of the ideas to solve the temporary issues with affordability are not workable, but I have a better idea. Every single day, millions of hardworking citizens wake up, get in their cars, and drive to work. They drive to build a better life for their families, to drop their kids off at school, to deliver goods, and to keep our local economy moving forward. But lately, that fundamental American ritual, the morning commute, has been paired with a growing sense of anxiety. Every time a driver pulls up to the pump, they watch the numbers roll up on the meter with a heavy heart. High gas prices are not just an inconvenience, they are a regressive anchor on the household budget. They act as a direct penalty on the working class, on independent contractors, and on everyday families who do not have the luxury of working from home. When fuel costs take up an ever larger share of a paycheck, families are forced to make impossible choices. Do they cut back on groceries? Do they delay a doctor's visit? This is the reality of the strain our people are under. It is time for us to step up and provide immediate, meaningful relief where our citizens feel it most. Today, I am calling for a substantial, targeted reduction in the gas tax to put hard-earned dollars directly back into the pockets of the people who earned them. Now, any responsible leader knows that a speech calling for a tax cut is only half a proposal. We cannot simply look at the ledger, slash revenue, and walk away. Our roads, bridges, and infrastructure rely on stable funding to remain safe and efficient. If we cut the gas tax without a plan, we risk degrading the very transportation network our drivers depend on. So, the critical question we must answer today is clear. How do we pay for it? How do we deliver financial relief to working families without creating a deficit or compromising our infrastructure? The answer lies in making a deliberate, strategic choice about what we want to incentivize in our society. I propose that we fully offset this gas tax reduction with a targeted increase in the tax on cigarettes and tobacco products. This is a structural shift that makes sense on every level, economically, socially, and morally. Let us look at the fundamental difference between these two commodities. Gasoline is an absolute necessity. In our current infrastructure, driving is not an optional luxury, it is a requirement for survival and employment. People must drive to live. Smoking, on the other hand, is a choice, and a dangerous one at that. Cigarettes are a harmful consumer product that yields no economic productivity, and instead places a massive, compounding burden on our society. By shifting a portion of the tax burden away from fuel and onto tobacco, we are aligning our fiscal policy with common sense values. We are lowering the cost of an essential good by increasing the cost of a non-essential, hazardous one. Furthermore, the economic impact of tobacco goes far beyond the price of a pack. Millions of dollars are drained from our public healthcare systems every year to treat preventable, smoking-related illnesses. When we raise the cigarette tax, we aren't just funding a gas tax cut, we are capturing revenue from a product that actively creates a public deficit, and using it to support the everyday commuter. But the benefits of this proposal extend far beyond the state balance sheet. This is a policy that achieves a double victory for our communities. Decades of public health data have proven one undeniable truth: when the cost of tobacco goes up, smoking rates go down. A higher cigarette tax is one of the single most effective tools we have to encourage current smokers to quit, and more importantly, to prevent the next generation, our teenagers and young people, from ever picking up the habit in the first place. Think about what we can accomplish with this single framework. On one hand, we ease the financial anxiety of the truck driver, the nurse, the teacher, and the small business owner every single time they fill up their tank. On the other hand, we take a bold, aggressive step toward improving public health, reducing chronic disease, and saving lives. We are choosing to tax a vice to relieve a necessity. We are choosing to disincentivize harm to make it easier for people to go to work and thrive. My friends, leadership is about making choices that reflect the needs of the people. Right now, our people need breathing room. They need to know that their government understands the pressures of the modern household budget. Let's stop making it so expensive for hardworking citizens to simply get to work. Let's pass this gas tax reduction, let's fund it responsibly through a tobacco tax increase, and let's build a future that is both more affordable and healthier for everyone.
The idea that a politician, especially a Democrat, is going to suspend or lower any tax is wishful thinking at best. And many Republican-led areas already have low to no gas taxes in place. So the natural reaction to avoid the energy-related inflation is not going to be in regards to the gas tax without some sort of offsetting trade-off. Providing economic relief while protecting our nation's health is something that should be appealing to America's left-of-center party. Well, far left-of-center party. Because the identity of those that they prey on are individuals who view smoking in a manner that connects with their cultural identity. As we already saw, they value a vote more than a person. Consider the amount of money spent on the ills caused by smoking in all its forms. There are no benefits of smoking. How much money is spent on addressing respiratory illness, all forms of cancer, and a host of other illnesses? Money that could be spent on education improvements, healthcare innovation, and public safety. Like the first episode of Mad Men, smoking is intertwined with our nation's history. Tobacco companies were once corporate giants, providing a comfortable living while shortening the lives of their consumers. But the tide has turned and Americans are waking up to the risk of smoking. To some degree. While smoking cigarettes has declined, the ill has really just shifted to vaping and weed, which some foolishly believe is safer. People do not always make rational decisions. Maybe increasing the cost can further help. Increase the taxes on cigarettes, cannabis products, and accessories and offset the gas tax. Kill two birds with one stone while saving thousands potentially. All the while, everyday Americans could experience some relief from the reduction in the gas tax, while potentially enjoying some relief from secondhand smoke, littering related to smoking, and the lack of annoyance of the smoker's cough. Smoking is really an illness in our society, but it has become part of some groups' culture. I like the economics of the idea because there is a clear benefit. But, the social solution will not happen. Smoking is baked into our society. First, they blamed Big Tobacco. If Philip Morris and others were punished and had to label products, then that would end smoking. It did not. States sued cigarette makers every chance they got, but smoking is still prevalent. Culture does play a part as smoking is traditional for so many people. Too many people grew up in households where parents smoked at the dinner table. Or their parents, grandparents, and key family members smoked outside. The deadly pattern was carried on to the next generation. People hold irrational views and those dangerous views are reinforced by societal approaches to separate responsibility away from the person with the choices they make. Smoking is not their fault. Therefore someone else should bear the responsibility and the cost. Look at the number of people who call for legalization of drugs and expect society to then foot the bill for their rehab. I do think we need to do things that make doing bad more economically unpleasant and discourage people. There is some data that points to reduction in smoking as a result of the tax increases and social messaging. But much of that is simply a transition to vaping or weed, both of which are still harmful. Allowing carcinogens to enter your body is not healthy at all. For the lower income people, smoking foolishly is used to appease their feelings and inability to progress upward. For educated people, smoking may be done to look the part, but many understand the impact of nicotine and avoid it. But in favor of other vices. But, if we can save money on gas, it does not hurt to add more of an incentive to avoid smoking. Let's not pretend that smoking is not annoying when done in front of entrances of buildings. The less smoking, the better our society and collective health will be.
Why do some potential market disruptors fail to stay in business? Anytime there is a business that remains as a market leader for quite some time, there will eventually be some competition. Eventually someone will find an area of the market that the market leader either ignores or does not adequately meet the needs of every consumer or prospective consumer in that space. A company cannot please everyone, so there will always be opportunities for others to find their space in the market. Not every competitor comes into the market to take over the leadership position. Some understand the importance of finding staying power and its own place in the market before making a real challenge to the top. Sometimes, the impulsive approach in immediately contending with the market leader can create barriers for the organization. At times, the best approach is to market itself as a complementary option or expansion of the market. As you may have realized from content released last year, I do follow professional wrestling or sports entertainment, as I think there are some interesting marketing and strategic approaches used to connect with fans and audiences. Sports entertainment is such a dynamic form of entertainment that reaches every corner of the global sports and entertainment community. While it's scripted and coordinated, the viewer still is in the dark of what the outcome will be, but the audience with its reactions can influence the outcome as well. And for television partners, professional wrestling companies like the World Wrestling Entertainment can provide year-long live content that is currently the desirable product for legacy networks that have seen their audiences dwindle for everything but live sports and sports-related content. WWE has a great history that revolutionized the industry by forming a national touring company. Then when it had real competition, the industry exploded in popularity. But poor business strategy led to the formation of one global giant that had competitive advantages in owning what essentially is the history of the entire industry, the best and deepest talent roster, and brand recognition in every corner of the globe. Few competitors enjoyed sustainable success. Some, like Impact Wrestling, TNA, created their own brand and cult of fans, but made the fatal mistake of trying to compete head-to-head without the resources, roster, and scope. They survived and are rebuilding as a complementary brand with its fan base that can cross over with the market leader without conflict. The real expected recent challenger that initially wanted to be a complementary brand, even in name only, but then went out to sign and poach talent away at any moment they could. While they provide another brand and choice, which can make all players better, their strategic approach is struggling to maintain its early gains. While the market for live sports content is thriving, there are some media companies that just are not able to effectively make the relationship work. Wrestling can be costly for the company to invest in, and the fans may not always watch live. Rather may prefer to watch replays online, which is not ideal for advertisers. And with recent mergers with Paramount that has a relationship with the WWE parent company, All Elite Wrestling could possibly need to find another home or proceed with YouTube as it has put out there. While I am not a real fan of their content or being a product of a Nepo baby, I think it has an interesting approach, but needs to diversify its writing. Seems more of a show that fans would prefer to watch clips online rather than experiencing the full episode. It came in with a great deal of hope, primarily for wrestlers who wanted an alternative that could help them negotiate their deals. And now with two solid complementary American-based competitors, they have that. But where will the revenues come from? Only time will tell. The Professional Golf Association, the PGA, was supposed to face competition from Live Golf, which was funded by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. With its early financial largesse, it was able to pull a significant number of top stars seeking big paydays and shorter work schedules. To its credit, it did create a noticeable impact and threaten the norms in professional golf. Some championed it as a competitor to what was essentially a monopoly. Others argued golf was better with all the stars competing against each other every week. The problem was that no one really liked the product. The stars like Dustin Johnson and others went to live, received crazy money and are no longer stars. While live stars were still able to compete in majors, they clearly lost a step by taking the money and the shorter calendar with what amounted to party golf rather than the serious competitive environments golf fans are used to watching. Their ratings were not great at all. Despite the strong financial backing, there were no revenues. Now, the Saudis are pulling their funds at the end of the season. Without a new backer, the tour will be gone. Insight is 2020. but the proposed merger between both organizations probably could have saved the careers of some of their stars and probably ensured that some level of team golf existed in the future. But there will be one tour standing, and the stars that failed to accept the recent olive branch will be stuck doing YouTube. I think it is important for a brand to prove its concept before claiming to be the next greatest thing. Before trying to supplant the existing market leader, big names are helpful, but if the core concept is not appealing, you end up with big contracts and large debt. Marketing accentuates good products, but is not a substitute for the actual product, service, or concepts you are asking consumers to accept. If they do not understand it, connect with it, or find value in it, then it will fail despite the star power.
I recall you saying something that your mother told you. A saying that sometimes the eyes are bigger than what the mouth can chew. That people take far more food than they can actually eat. Or was simply telling you to eat less. Nonetheless, it is natural to go into a restaurant, smell good food, and want to try everything. When there is a market leader that is experiencing consistent growth in both its revenues and profit, it is not surprising that someone believes that they can do the same. Even if they study the company and understand how it operates and connects with customers, flaws in early execution can harm the viability of the new entity. And sometimes the ego of the entrepreneurs can be a challenge. People do not want to admit when they are wrong or are failing. The smart and successful people are willing to understand where there are shortcomings to right the ship. To be able to leave no doubt of success and meet the needs of customers rather than push back against social media comments. With the leaders of these two organizations, they have a level of sensitivity to the views and opinions of people on social media that are largely uninformed or simply trolling. Sometimes the best branding is not engaging with detractors. It can be tempting, but it platforms their complaints, which can make people aware of the flaws, adding more reasons to oppose the competing products, services, or offerings. There will be a market for sports entertainment that will contain all elite wrestling in some form. They have built a fan base. Just has not grown much lately and will face challenges in convincing television partners to invest in them or retain them when the market leader is a far bigger partner. But it does have a viable future. Live seems like a more dire situation. They have not earned revenues based on reports. Having some astronomically high contracts without revenue to offset, that is a surefire way for a business to fail. At some point, it needed to connect with an audience and earn revenues. The Saudis have plenty of liquid gold to invest money in ventures with no future. But, even they have their limits, when it makes them look bad. I am not sure that the PGA will be able to hold a grudge and allow talent that could help them hang out there if Live fails. Eventually there will be some reunion, I suppose.
So the world is turning back towards peace? The big news of the week is that President Donald Trump made his earlier planned visit to China to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping to try to stabilize the relationship between the world's two largest economies and global superpowers. There has been no one in recent history willing to confront the bad behaviors of others on the global stage like President Donald Trump. During his first term, Trump was the only person willing to say what most people were thinking. China was not playing fair on the global stage and other economies were negatively impacted by it. Many economists, policymakers, and business people could agree as it was really clear as day, but few would actually say it because our politics danced around major issues that impacted the greatest number of people. Compared to recent presidents, I believe it is safe to say that Trump has been tougher on trade violators, including China. But he has been able to find ways to maintain productive ties that yield mutual benefits. There is a need to reset the relationship a bit, and denying is really not being honest considering what everyone already knows. Despite the tension, there is also a need for a real partnership to exist. Even in the face of addressing the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Trump has balanced the need to bring both sides to the negotiating table with the willingness to implement sanctions to continue the pressure to end the war. And now, the Russian aggression seems potentially close to an end as Russia seems to have grown tired of a stagnant war. Securing common ground with our global rivals and potential enemies is important to avoid escalations and ongoing conflicts. We have a military operation that needs to find a course to an end where a major terror sponsor does not have a nuclear weapon in its future and all parties agree to prevent that from happening. Ideally, Iran can be convinced to set aside the generational ideological hatred and focus on becoming a productive member of the global community. Turn away from their real oppression and allow for its society to experience freedom and opportunity. While there are not many real solid details of the agreements reached in Trump's visit to China, there is hope that we can right the ship for an important relationship where our collective interests are not undermined and there can be trust on both sides. America is no longer in decline thanks to a president that champions its greatness. A partner that is teetering can find its footing if it stops manipulating trade.
While the Iran conflict is understandable, but not ideal, there is a need to find a resolution, reopen the waterways, and push the rogue terrorist regime away from its past and towards a different future. We need to stop debating over false narratives and realize that a world with a reformed Iran is a much safer place for everyone. There is a need for our traditional allies to wake up and realize their roles in maintaining a collective defense, especially in a relationship where they received a greater share of the benefits while America has borne more than our fair share of the cost. Europe needs to be able to serve as a partner in the global community, not with fleeting words, but with the will and resolve to stand on the right side of issues. We all should admire the fight that Ukraine has shown, standing up to a mighty enemy who was expected to prevail in less than 4 days. Well, it is almost 4 years and they have been able to bring the fight to their enemy with our help. But they have developed defenses that will help them stand up to future aggression and have greatly shown that patriotism and courage can defeat even the most ardent enemy. During the Biden era, the world was drifting apart. Now, there is a chance that the superpowers will be better able to coexist. We need to find, build relationships and even repair relationships with our traditional allies and neighbors, even if they have not been very neighborly or friendly. A connected world that is able to communicate and negotiate will hopefully be better able to coexist and find peaceful solutions. Thank you for experiencing this episode of the Christopher Peter Review. Your viewership is appreciated and valued. Please follow the Christopher Peter Review on social media and continue to visit www.crcreview.com for new episodes. Thank you once again. Until next time.
Thank you for experiencing the Christopher Peter Review. Your source for an economic perspective that is completely objective.